This is Fast Track Friday, so we're going to go ahead and dive into really thinking about how do we break down the silos and encourage cross-departmental collaboration in all of our schools, right? So thank you for joining us today. We are really diving into, in many schools, you got to realize, in many departments, everybody's operating in isolation, from the math department to science, ELA, SPED, right? We're all often working in our silos. So hopefully we can talk about what does it take to break down the silos and how do we examine our work systems and how do we do better to make sure that we're meeting the needs of all students for success. You may say, Cassandra, like, why does this matter, right? There's power in collaboration, right? We know in student outcomes improve, there's personalized learning, and everybody can collaborate. There's strength in the school culture when we're talking about the same vision and mission, and then we're all enhancing, it's enhanced problem solving, really thinking about how do we leverage the strengths of all the educators, support staff to support a rich environment, and then really thinking about truly differentiated instruction that meets the needs of all of our students. Man, just imagine, these are the key benefits. What does it look like for transparent work streams, right? We know improved student achievement, really thinking about how do we create visibility between different departments because we're all pretty much working with the same students. How do we increase teacher satisfaction, share our goals departmentally, vertically, and horizontally plan, and then reveal some of our common objectives because we want to make sure that there's a stronger sense of community engagement, a stronger sense of shared responsibility for student success, and a stronger sense of problem solving, especially with behavior and thinking about what are learning gaps and how do we increase engagement and issues that are transparent across all grade levels and all content areas. Okay, so in order to talk about this work to make it effective, we have to talk about the 4 Ps of collaborative planning. Really thinking about, creating transparent work streams, right? So everyone knows their role, they know their responsibilities, the collaborative planning and what that looks like, right? We're scheduling times across departmental planning to really discuss data, thinking about the teams, right, and the models and the teaching models. So we're pairing teachers from different departments who have different specialties. And then we're talking about relationship building, just being intentional that our activities are building trust, and then there's communication across these roles. And then looking at what does team teaching look like? What does real world applications look like? Right, one teach, one observe. How do we do that in the classroom? Maybe you may have subs come in, some watching, rotation, station teaching where we're dividing content and students are rotating through the stations, thinking about parallel teaching, dividing class, teaching the same content with smaller content. What are some alternative teaching? One works with a larger group while the other one works with a small group pullouts, and then thinking about where both teachers are sharing the instruction all of the time. So like looking at what this looks like and how it can happen successfully. For one district, ELA and social studies teachers would like co-develop a project, looking at both the standards. In another, maybe working with SPED and general education, meet weekly to plan what are some scaffolding techniques that we can use together, right? These are just actionable, they're proven practices that we know work. So in this aspect, we are creating cross-team relationships. And so really thinking about what does it mean to implement common practices, and then we're requiring expertise from multiple departments, creating opportunities for collaboration. We're developing a role of empathy. So each department is unique. We definitely know that when teachers are working together, sharing their expertise. We're holding regular huddles, right? So we're definitely talking about weekly briefs, implementing these things. How do we maintain consistent communication, right? We're inspiring each other to collaborate, to innovate. We're really working to grow professionally together as a team. We're not alone. We know we're supportive of one another. We know we're learning about being equitable, and really having a successful place for our teachers to learn and grow together. So when we're thinking about interdisciplinary and thinking about project-based learning and action, so we're always thinking about, okay, so we're in our silos at school. What small step can you take to kind of bridge this gap, and what does that look like? And so collaboration really doesn't always require this massive initiative, right? Sometimes it could be like a conversation in the hallway where we're talking about co-planning something that we can collaborate with, right? And so really thinking about how do we take out these silos and develop something together. And so what does that look like in each subject matter? How do we bring it together? to think about an interdisciplinary project-based learning approach to a concept. So when we dive into this collaboration, we often find successful outcomes, right? Even with the best intention, it definitely can be a challenge to kind of get this started, even if this is not something you do. But we do know there's roadblocks to this. We do know about the time constraints. Teachers are already overwhelmed, and now you're asking me to collaborate with somebody and then maybe work with somebody. But really thinking about how do we go over that hurdle, right? How do we schedule protective planning time, maybe our PLCs or early release days. Another roadblock is like lack of communication. If there's not defined goals, teachers can struggle, right? It becomes confusing. So really thinking about like using a shared tool, like maybe agenda or shared planning templates, like using digital across different platforms can definitely help with this. Another barrier is territorial thinking. When teachers say, well, this is my classroom, these are my students. And so some departments or spaces may resist this because they feel like they're losing some type of sense of autonomy. So some of the solutions may be to think of how do we constantly show that we trust this work that we're doing, this interdisciplinary work, and just hope that it's not threatening our individual expertise and we're both allowed to shine. The next thing is real, like inconsistent leadership support. So if your principal or leader is not on board and they're not modeling or reinforcing this, it will not stick. It won't work. So you have to have leaders that are on board that endorse this and participate in it and just believe in the collaboration efforts. But we also got to understand that, I really think that these barriers are opportunities for us to kind of show how we can overcome some of these challenges. Okay, if you have leadership on board, this is how you would kind of facilitate your first meeting, right? This is kind of your launching point, of cross-departmental meeting, whether you're a leader taking the initiative or you're just somebody trying to, maybe your AP or maybe your coach trying to make sure the meeting is productive and purposeful. So first, you definitely got to define what is your purpose? Why are we here? Why should we as departments be planning together, right? We got to be really specific about the desired outcome, right? How are we aligning our instruction, integrating support services, and even addressing our student gaps? And what does this look like, right? This really sets the tone. So we got to get it right at the beginning to get this started. The second thing you need to do is identify the participants, right? So it works best when you have the right voices in the room, right? If you're including the stakeholders like Jen, Ed, Sped, counselors, coaches, whatever it takes, because we have to always think about if we roll this out, we need diverse perspectives in the room. And we to ensure that different liaisons or family liaisons are there so they can understand kind of and support us in this initiative. Next, we need to create a structured agenda. Of course, winging it is not an option at this point. We have specific topics, we have specific time limits, right? And include what are action items. This helps all of us stay focused. And we use a shared document so everybody's included in the planning and there's a visual to establish these norms. Next is thinking about what are our established shared expectations, right? Who is responsible for what? What are the deadlines? Who needs to follow up? If it falls apart, who's being held accountable, right? Making our expectations transparent and, of course, smart and achievable because we want to make sure, like, who's sending out the email, who's doing the Google Docs, all this is in place. How are we communicating? Maybe it'd be through Slack or some type of online LMS. So really thinking about what that looks like. And then last but not least, what are our outcomes? Really thinking about, who's recording this? What is the decision that's made? What are the ideas? And what are our action steps? And making it in one accessible location. These truths really help kind of avoid confusion. It helps avoid like when people are pulled in different directions. Really thinking about this is the hardest part, making all this come together and having a clear structure. But if you have this structure, it could be a powerful tool to kind of show this transformation school-wide. If you are excited about this, make sure you DM me. If you want to learn more, definitely connect with me. All right, so really thinking about how do we drop our silos, drop down our barriers to make sure this is a low lift for our teachers and thinking about what do we need to do to break down our silos. So I think we've talked about, the why, the how, but I'm really big on actionable. Like, what are you going to do to challenge yourself to go beyond this? And it could be, here are the 3 steps. Step 1, connect with the department. Think about your school. Where are the silos most evident? Which 2 departments, if connected, could create the most powerful learning outcome. We usually start with people who are excited about this opportunity because that goes a long way. Maybe it's ELA and SPED, maybe it's counseling in STEM. Start where you feel like you have the most potential, because this is a model for what success can look like throughout the school. Next, thinking about a common project. Like, what is a shared goal or event that both departments can own? And think about, like, what does this project look like, and what is the intervention plan, and then how do we co-plan maybe something like a parent night with this, around this, right? We want to make sure, again, it is successful when you have the right people at the table. And last but not least is the concrete step. Take an action. Please take an action this week. Maybe you're scheduling a 15-minute talk with your friends, colleagues, somebody in the department. Maybe you're inviting them to co-plan a lesson, right? That could be nice. You're analyzing student data together, right? Or you're just asking, like, how can I support your work? These kind of small little baby steps really lead to continuous growth, continuous partnership. So I believe in the power of cross collaboration, cross departmental. I know it improved efficacy, and we've seen schools really improve their goals, meet their expectation. Schools have been able to foster trust and improve in all these learning experiences for our students that are in your building. So, all right, talk to you later. I hope you enjoyed it.